It was 2007. I was living and working in Mozambique at the time. We were doing humanitarian work. Mozambique was one of the poorest countries of the world. It was on the southern east coast of Africa. And my wife and I were traveling down the east coast, and we went into one of these kind of wooden carving places that you see across Africa. And I asked in my broken Portuguese to the vendor there, "Que está? What is that?" And the Mozambican said, "This is the modern day businessman. He's holding a mobile phone to his ear." At 2007, there weren't many landline phones in Mozambique. In fact, what we often talked about was that communication in Mozambique was leapfrogging what was the infrastructure at the time. People were adopting mobile phones and not even getting landlines. And this is the promise of technology, that we would be able to have an order of magnitude change in our lives, not just an incremental change that provides us with a small value here, but we would have a change that is 10 times greater and exceed kind of what is reasonably possible. And the promise of technology does provide it. We do see moments in time like this where we suddenly just leap ahead. What brought me to the Philippines was actually Typhoon Haiyan. Super Typhoon Haiyan took around 6,000 lives in this country. My mother was so proud that I was going back to the country of my birth. And I was working in Samar and Tacloban at the time, and a fellow Aussie friend of mine, and she was working at the World Bank and doing some consulting there. And I just so happened to catch her before she was leaving. And we had breakfast, and Roz said, "Israel, you're in technology, you're an engineer. You've got to look at mobile money in the Philippines. Did you know that Philippines invented mobile money?" I was like, this is amazing. If you understand relief responses, one of the first things that you do, or after a couple of weeks after the disaster, you do direct cash distributions as a way to jumpstart the economy. And as an NGO worker and organizing that work, one of the concerns is security. Cash is difficult to carry around, to move, it's dangerous. And so the possibility of being able to use mobile money in the Philippines, I thought was magnificent. But the reality was, unfortunately, did not live up to the expectations of technology. And while we had these great aspirations that technology would be the solution, in Basay, in Samar, my first night there were people lining up to charge their mobile phones on a generator. They were actually sending videos back also to home, to their relatives in the US. Typhoon Haiyan was the most broadcast disaster with all the migrant workers abroad. It was actually garnered the most response from the international community. But these people were able to communicate, but they weren't able to send money. And we live in an era where you can send a video across the world, but you can't even receive money on your phone. And these people were stuck. They could ask for money, but they couldn't receive it. And so despite the promise of technology, it didn't deliver. And in social work and in other circles, we often call these problems wicked problems, in that you can't use technology as a quick way to fix what is there. And when you start to dig deeper into the Philippine ecosystems of payments and banking, you begin to see how disconnected and fragmented it is, that it becomes extremely difficult to deliver money to the provinces. Back to us. We provide cross-border remittances and payments. And you think, how do you go about solving a big problem? I'm an engineer. I love solving problems. It's what draws me to working in the startup sector, what draws me to try to tackle big social problems. And when they say, when you're starting a startup, you need a problem to solve. In the Philippines, there are many problems to solve. That's not the trick. I think if I were living in the US, perhaps I could start Uber for puppy dogs. The infrastructure exists. I could probably raise a bunch of money for that niche idea and depend on the cars around me to be able to deliver puppy dogs. But in the Philippines, there are so many problems, and banking is so disconnected and disaggregated that you kind of have to find a problem and find an opportunity to reach it. And so this is the problem that we started out to try and solve when we founded BloomSolutions. And Philippines is the third largest remittance recipient in the world. And 2016, it received roughly $30 billion. Some say it's actually double this. And spent about $1 billion in fees. Most Filipinos who are sending money back home don't realize that they're paying on average around 6 to 7% in order to do the currency exchange. And then in some locations around the world, up to 20% on the fees. And this is captured in the foreign exchange fee. If you look at Google and go USD peso rate, you often don't get that as a consumer. And the unfortunate circumstance of the world financial system is that those who actually are sending the least, and we're talking about $400 transactions here, which make up 80% of their salary, the people who send the least actually pay the most. If you have lots of money, you could negotiate a better rate with your bank. And so this is the problem we were trying to solve. How do we allow these people who are sending small amounts to do it with the lowest fees? Our approach is actually to not try and disrupt. Our approach at Bloom is actually try to fit ourselves into the financial system and work with existing players to kind of upgrade the system from the back end. I think the system here works, it's just probably a little inefficient. So what we've done is we've created and used Bitcoin in the back end as a settlement mechanism for transfers. Our main customers are money transfer operators around the world who are counter shops in Worldwide House or Lucky Plaza in Hong Kong and Singapore, where Filipinos go to on a Sunday and they hand over their cash and then so that they'll get pesos here. Little do they know that some of those places are using Bitcoin in the back end to power their remittances. We don't hide what we do, but it doesn't matter when the relative in the Philippines receives their money within about 10 minutes, and we tell them exactly how many pesos they're going to get. When I send money from Australia to the Philippines, even using a new company like TransferWise, I'm actually bearing the foreign exchange risk. I don't actually know how many pesos I'm going to get in the Philippine bank account here, because remittances has traditionally been that the sender bears the risk of the foreign exchange. And one of the value propositions that we've been able to provide is that you could send your money, you hand over Korean won, anywhere in the Philippines, and you'll know exactly how many pesos you'll get out the other end. And this is important for Filipinos because we've noticed that relatives or spouses in Korea, for example, sending their money to their husbands at home, want to control the spending of the recipient. They don't want to send $400 across just in case hubby has a bad day and starts drinking or misappropriates the kids' school fees. Instead, they want to be able to kind of have some control over that. So being able to deliver a solution that goes, well, do you want 10,000 pesos? Yes, you can have that exactly at your door or via a pawn shop. You'll notice on both ends of the remittance channel, we haven't actually changed anything. People are actually using Bitcoin through our system, and they don't even know it. At the on-ramp, they're handing over cash, Korean won, Hong Kong dollars, to possibly a remittance or money transfer operator store that they've used for a while. And then on the off-ramp here in the Philippines, they'll get it into their bank account within about 10 minutes. And then they'll pick it up through the normal channels such as Cebuana Lulier, Lulier, or cash pickup facilities throughout the Philippines. About 40% of our volume goes into cash pickup facilities, and then about 60% goes bank-to-bank transfers. And we've been able to provide this back-end solution, and this is a moment of pride for me here right now, that we've been able to start this remittance business, and I think it's an indicator of why the power of technology and Bitcoin. We started this company here in the Philippines with less than $200,000 and a team of less than 10 people. And we've transferred over about $120 million of transactions in the last 18 months, 75,000 beneficiaries across the Philippines, and then now even abroad into Hong Kong, Australia, and we're looking into Africa. And I think this is the power of technology. And so what we're trying to do is kind of combine technology with the existing landscape that we see here and find kind of solutions that are accessible to everyone. Because when I started this business 2 years ago, I was telling a friend at the Peninsula, oh yes, I'm starting this business in Bitcoin. And she was like, oh, tell me more about Bitcoin. That's so fascinating, Israel. And as the night progressed, I told her about blockchain technology and encryption protocols and confirmation. At the end of the night, it seemed like it came to no end. She said to me, oh, Israel, I just wish you all the best with your Bitcoin enterprise. I'm like, no, it's not a con. And much of what we've been trying to do is trying to introduce these technologies in a way that they're not misperceived. So this is what we do at Bloom, and we're looking at more actually retail solutions in the future. And we're looking forward to be able to provide safer mechanisms for your average Filipino, but even just all the migrant workers around the world who are using or rely on financial systems in order to support their families. We're very inclusive, not only with the people that we try to serve, but as I said earlier, we're trying to upgrade the system here. And so we'd love to talk with you if you'd love to learn more. There are my contact details, but thank you for this opportunity.